Tonight, we embark on a journey, not just through time, but through thought, through wisdom, through the quiet echo of minds that change the world forever. Far away, more than 2,000 years ago, beneath the soft golden light of the Mediterranean sun, a civilization blossomed among the olive groves and marble temples. It was a time when people gathered not just for trade or celebration, but to ask questions about life, the soul, the cosmos, and what it means to live well. This was ancient Greece, the cradle of Western philosophy, a place where thought was cherished, where ideas were sculpted as delicately as statues, where men walked slowly under the colonnades, pondering the mysteries of virtue, knowledge, and truth. And so tonight, let us walk with them, not in haste, but in calm. Let us feel the warmth of the Aegean breeze. Let us sit beneath the shade of the plane trees in the Agora of Athens, and let us listen quietly, peacefully, to the voices of three extraordinary men whose ideas still breathe through our world: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. They were not kings, nor warriors, nor men of great wealth, but their legacy has endured longer than empires. Their questions and answers, their doubts and revelations still live in our universities, our democracies, our sciences, and our daily lives. Let us begin with the gentle voice of the one who spoke no words himself on parchment, yet whose wisdom echoes most clearly: Socrates. Socrates, the stone-cutter's son, a man of plain appearance. He did not write, he did not claim to teach, he simply asked questions. And through those questions, he ignited minds like fire. He wandered the streets of Athens barefoot, his eyes always searching, his voice calm and probing. To the young and old, to craftsmen and politicians, he asked, "What is justice? What is virtue? What is the good life?" He called himself a midwife of ideas, helping others give birth to understanding. His method was not to lecture, but to dialogue. He would ask and listen and gently prod with more questions. He believed that within each person the truth already existed. It only needed to be uncovered. And yet his approach was unsettling to many. He exposed contradictions. He revealed how little people truly knew. His humility was mistaken for mockery, his wisdom for subversion. He said, "I know that I know nothing." And in that simple statement, he taught the world the value of admitting ignorance, the beginning of all wisdom. But not all were comforted by his quest. In time, the city of Athens, wounded by war, fearful of decline, put Socrates on trial. They accused him of corrupting the youth and dishonoring the gods. He stood before them calmly, unwavering. He could have fled, he could have begged, but he chose instead to drink the hemlock. And in that final act, he became more than a philosopher. He became a martyr for thought. His student Plato was there. He watched his teacher die, and from that moment on, Plato vowed that the light of philosophy would not be extinguished. Plato, the nobleman with a poet's soul. Unlike Socrates, Plato wrote. He preserved his teacher's voice in dialogues, stories filled with questions and characters. But Plato's mind soared even further, into realms beyond the senses, into the world of forms. To Plato, the world we see is only a shadow. Reality, he believed, lies in the eternal, unchanging forms. Beauty, justice, truth. These are not things we see, but ideals we know deep within, with the eye of the soul. In his dialogue, The Republic, Plato imagined a just society, ruled not by power but by wisdom, a city led by philosopher kings, those who loved truth more than gold, who ruled not for themselves, but for the good of all. He told the story of a cave, where prisoners sat in chains, watching shadows on a wall. They believed those shadows were all there was. But one prisoner escapes, and sees the sun, and realizes the truth. And when he returns to free the others, they resist. They fear the light. This, for Plato, was the philosopher's path, to seek the truth beyond appearances, to ascend from darkness to knowledge, and to return with compassion for those still in shadow. His academy, founded in Athens, became the first institution of higher learning in the Western world. Its doors stood open for centuries, and inscribed above them were the words, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter here." For Plato believed that truth was not opinion, but something as precise and beautiful as mathematics. And he inspired generations to seek it, not with violence, but with reason. And then there was Aristotle, Plato's student, the brilliant son of a physician. Aristotle, who disagreed with his master and yet carried his legacy forward in powerful new ways. Where Plato looked to the heavens, Aristotle looked to the earth. Where Plato saw a world of ideal forms, Aristotle saw the value in the here and now. He believed in observation, in categorization, in looking closely at the natural world and finding patterns, causes, purposes. He studied animals, stars, plants, ethics, logic, politics, rhetoric, poetry. And through his mind, he brought order to chaos. His works shaped science and language and the very structure of how we think. Aristotle believed that every being had a purpose, an essence, a reason for being, and that the good life was found in fulfilling that purpose, in flourishing according to one's nature. He taught that virtue lies in the mean, between excess and deficiency. Courage, he said, is between recklessness and cowardice. Generosity between wastefulness and stinginess. This idea, the golden mean, still lives in our understanding of balance, of moderation, of wise living. And unlike Plato, Aristotle saw no need to escape the physical world. He saw the divine in nature itself, in growth, in change, in the unfolding of potential. He tutored Alexander the Great, who would carry his teachings across continents. And though his own writings were often lecture notes, they became the foundation of biology, physics, and metaphysics for centuries to come. So here we have them, three minds in a quiet lineage. Socrates, the questioner, Plato, the dreamer of ideals, Aristotle, the observer of the real. Each passed the torch to the next, not with pride, but with wonder. Their legacy is not simply in books or theories, it is in how we think, how we question, how we seek justice and knowledge and meaning. Their influence is quiet, like water beneath stone, but it shapes everything: our laws, our ethics, our education. When we speak of logic, we speak Aristotle's language. When we imagine a better world, we dream with Plato's vision. And when we ask, what is the right thing to do, we walk in the sandals of Socrates. Even now, as you rest, you are part of that legacy. Your thoughts, your questions, your curiosity, they connect you to a conversation that has lasted for millennia. And so, as your breath slows and your mind softens, know that you are not alone. You are lying among the stars of ancient minds. You are dreaming the dreams that Socrates once whispered under the moon. You are drifting along the gentle stream of wisdom where all things are connected. Let the voices of the past guide you, not with noise, but with silence. Let their words dissolve into calm. Let your heart feel the peace of truth quietly unfolding. And now, as you continue to relax deeper into the calm, I'll carry you further into the legacy these thinkers left behind, how their ideas grew, transformed, and became the very foundation of the modern world you live in. We'll explore the echoes of Aristotle in scientific discovery, the rebirth of Plato during the Renaissance, the defiant spirit of Socrates in modern civil rights. We'll walk gently, slowly, never rushing, always wondering. The sun has long set over the marble temples of Athens, but the ideas born there did not die. They traveled, carried by students, translated by scholars, rediscovered by thinkers across generations. As Europe fell into what some would call the Dark Ages, many of these texts were lost to the West. But they lived on in other lands, kept safe in libraries from Byzantium to Baghdad. In the House of Wisdom, deep in the heart of Islamic civilization, scholars preserved and translated the works of Aristotle and Plato. They studied them, commented on them, and passed them along, not just as history but as living thought. 1,000 years after Socrates walked the streets of Athens, his spirit reawakened in the cobbled alleys of Renaissance Florence. Here, in the flickering candlelight of monasteries and early universities, thinkers began to rediscover the ancient texts, brought back through translations from Arabic, Greek, and Latin. Plato returned first, his mystical ideas stirring the hearts of artists and poets. To them, the world of forms was not just philosophy, but inspiration. The perfect circle, the ideal beauty, the unseen harmony behind the visible, all of this fed the soul of the Renaissance. Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Botticelli, their art, their proportion, their search for divine beauty in the human form, all of it echoed Plato's belief that there is more than what meets the eye. But it was Aristotle who would shape the sciences. His careful categorization, his love of reason and cause, gave rise to a new way of looking at nature, not as a mystery to be feared, but as a pattern to be understood. In universities across Europe, students learned logic through Aristotle's organon. They studied physics, ethics, politics, and poetics, all filtered through his systematic mind. And as centuries passed, thinkers like Thomas Aquinas wove Aristotle's philosophy into the very fabric of Christian theology, building bridges between faith and reason. Even as Galileo looked through his telescope, challenging old views of the cosmos, the language he spoke was one rooted in Aristotle's legacy. The scientific method, observe, hypothesize, test, carries his fingerprint, though Aristotle himself never called it by that name. And what of Socrates? His method, the gentle art of questioning, would live on in law, in education, in activism. His refusal to accept easy answers became a model for critical thought. His courage in the face of death inspired those who would challenge authority in search of justice. In quiet classrooms, when a teacher asks not for facts, but for understanding, Socrates is present. In courtrooms, when truth is pursued through argument, clarity, and cross-examination, his spirit stirs. And in the hearts of those who stand for conscience, who speak truth to power, who refuse to be silent, even at great cost, Socrates breathes again. You see, these men were not distant gods. They were human, flawed, searching, unsure. They lived in times of war, of uncertainty, of change. But they chose to seek wisdom. They chose to ask, to listen, to reflect, and in doing so they lit a fire that never went out. Their thoughts ripple still through the centuries, shaping how we govern, how we reason, how we love and learn. Even the very idea of a university, the notion that knowledge is a lifelong pursuit open to all, comes from them. Plato's Academy, Aristotle's Lyceum, these were the ancestors of the institutions we know today. The classroom, the lecture, the dialogue, the seminar, these are their gifts. Democracy, too, owes them a debt. The Athenian experiment in self-rule, flawed though it was, introduced the radical notion that ordinary people could govern themselves through reasoned debate and shared values. And while Socrates questioned that very democracy, his trial and death taught us a deeper lesson, that justice must never be blind to the voice of conscience, that the crowd is not always right, that the soul must answer to more than law. And so, their legacy lives not just in books, but in values. When we believe in reasoned debate, when we honor the pursuit of truth above convenience, when we value education not just for profit, but for growth, when we pause to ask, what is the right thing to do? We are walking with them, quietly, humbly. In modern times, many have looked back to these thinkers for guidance. The Enlightenment, that great wave of reason that swept through Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries, was built on the foundations laid in Athens. Thinkers like John Locke, Immanuel Kant, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, they read Plato and Aristotle. They debated the role of reason, the rights of man, the structure of society. The American founding fathers studied the Greek city-states. The architecture of the U.S. Capitol echoes the Parthenon. The very notion of a republic, of civic virtue, of checks and balances, traces back through Rome to Plato's dialogues. And in the world of ethics, how we decide what is right and wrong, Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics remains a cornerstone. His idea that virtue is not a rule, but a habit, not an answer, but a way of living, still guides discussions from medicine to politics to personal growth. Even the concept of happiness, so often misunderstood, finds deeper meaning in Aristotle's vision. He used the word eudaimonia, a rich term that means not fleeting pleasure but lasting fulfillment, living in accordance with your values, your nature, your best self. This is not a shallow happiness but a flourishing, a life well lived, And in education, the Socratic method continues to shape how we learn. Law schools, philosophy seminars, and even grade school classrooms use it. Teachers asking students not just to memorize, but to think. What do you believe? Why do you believe it? What would you say to someone who disagrees? These questions may seem simple, but they open minds. They teach humility, curiosity, and courage. And yet, the story of these thinkers is not one of answers, but of beginnings. For philosophy is not a destination. It is a journey, one walked slowly, thoughtfully, sometimes in silence. It is not about being certain. It is about being awake. And as you rest here now, wrapped in calm, you too are part of that journey. Each time you wonder, each time you reflect, you take one more step along the path they began. You don't need to read every dialogue or memorize every concept. Their wisdom is not a test. It is a presence, a whisper in your thoughts. When you pause before reacting, when you seek the deeper reason, when you ask, "What kind of person do I wish to be?" you are answering the call of philosophy, a quiet call, gentle, patient, like the lapping of waves on an ancient shore. Even in the chaos of modern life, their voices remain. Socrates asking questions beneath the starlight, Plato gazing upward, dreaming of ideals, Aristotle observing the world and finding meaning in motion. They are with you, not as idols, but as companions. And now, as your breathing slows even more, as your body sinks into rest, as the thoughts drift like feathers on a breeze, allow their wisdom to settle beside you. Let their calm be your calm. Let their search become your stillness. Let their legacy, so vast and enduring, cradle you in quiet wonder. You are part of something timeless, not because you know all the answers, but because you too are willing to ask. Sleep now, gently, in the warm embrace of thought. Let the centuries melt away. Let Athens return softly in dreams. And when you wake, let the light of wisdom greet you like the rising sun. As we drift onward, the world around us becomes quieter still. The olive trees sway gently under a moonlit sky. And in this stillness, we return again, not to facts or dates, but to meaning, to the way philosophy, born in dusty agoras and shaded gardens, has moved through time like a soft river through a canyon, slow, persistent, shaping everything it touches. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle may be long gone, their footsteps worn away by centuries, but their questions remain. And from those questions grew entire traditions of thought. After Aristotle, centuries passed, empires rose and fell. Yet, in the quiet corners of schools, temples, monasteries, and private studies, people continue to ask, what is the good life? What does it mean to be just? What is the nature of reality? These were not just academic concerns. They were deeply human ones. In the Hellenistic world that followed Alexander the Great, new philosophical schools emerged. They were deeply influenced by Socrates and his heirs, yet they also brought new flavors, more personal, more practical. The Stoics, for example, taught that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from mastering our inner response to it. They echoed Socrates in their search for virtue and resilience, believing that true freedom comes from aligning the soul with reason. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, said that we are not disturbed by things, but by our thoughts about things. And this idea that suffering can be softened by shifting perception still rings true today. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, wrote in his private journal, what we now call Meditations, about the importance of self-control, humility, and duty. Though a ruler of vast lands, he found solace not in power, but in philosophy. In his quiet writings, we find the legacy of Socrates, the pursuit of inner harmony above outer success. And then there were the Epicureans, often misunderstood as hedonists, but in truth seekers of peace and balance. For Epicurus, pleasure was not wild indulgence, but the absence of pain, of fear, of turmoil. Friendship, simplicity, contemplation, these were the paths to happiness. These schools kept the fire burning. They adapted ancient insights to new contexts, and they remind us that philosophy was never only about abstract thought. It was also about how to live, how to suffer, how to rejoice, how to die. In the centuries that followed, these ideas merged with new traditions. As Christianity grew and spread, thinkers like Augustine, and later Aquinas, drew from Plato and Aristotle to frame questions of faith, morality, and divine order. They saw in Greek philosophy a bridge between reason and revelation, and in the Islamic Golden Age, as we mentioned before, Aristotle became known as the first teacher, revered by scholars like Avicenna and Averroes. They saw no contradiction between philosophy and faith, only harmony waiting to be discovered. And so, through many hands, the legacy of Athens was passed on. Each era found in it what it needed: structure, clarity, hope. And when the modern age arrived, it did not begin from nothing. It grew from roots planted in those early dialogues beneath the Athenian sky. The Enlightenment brought a new emphasis on reason, liberty, and human rights. But its core belief that people can understand the world and govern themselves through rational thought was deeply Socratic. The scientific revolution, which transformed our view of nature, owed much to Aristotle's methods of observation and classification, even as new thinkers moved beyond them. And as revolutions swept through France, America, and beyond, the echoes of the ancient polis, the city-state as a place of shared responsibility, resurfaced. The very idea that governments derive legitimacy not from divine right, but from the consent of the governed, reflects a lineage of questioning power that began with Socrates. But philosophy did not stop evolving. In the 19th and 20th centuries, new movements emerged, some in harmony with the ancients, some in tension. Existentialists like Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and later Camus and Sartre focused not on universal truths, but on personal meaning. They wrestled with doubt, with absurdity, with freedom. Yet even in their divergence, they shared with Socrates the impulse to ask, how should I live? Modern psychology, too, has roots in philosophical inquiry. Freud and Jung drew from classical thought in their exploration of the self, and cognitive therapies today, which help millions manage anxiety and depression, are often aligned with Stoic principles, recognizing that our thoughts shape our emotions and that change begins within. Meanwhile, political philosophy, ethics, metaphysics, and epistemology, the very structure of these fields, are shaped by the questions asked in Plato's dialogues and Aristotle's treatises. Even in artificial intelligence and computer science, we see the fingerprints of ancient logic. Algorithms, symbolic reasoning, decision trees, these are, in a way, the descendants of Aristotle's syllogisms. Philosophy has become global now, enriched by voices from every culture, yet the old questions remain. What is real? What is good? What is beauty? And in quiet rooms, in books, in conversations, in solitary walks, people still return to Socrates, to Plato, to Aristotle, not because they had all the answers, but because they taught us how to begin. Their wisdom is not a fixed system. It is a light to walk by. It tells us, don't just accept, reflect. Don't just live, examine. Don't just know, understand. Even as you lie here now, resting peacefully, your mind so softly, so gently engages in this oldest of human activities, reflection. You are not a passive vessel, you are an explorer. In the stillness of night, you are in dialogue with yourself, with the past, with the great chain of minds that stretches through time. And what a beautiful thought that is. You are part of something enduring. You are not separate from the story of philosophy. You are one of its chapters. Every question you ask, every truth you seek, continues the journey that Socrates began when he stood in the marketplace and asked a simple question. Not to show he was wise, but to discover wisdom with others. You, too, are discovering, slowly, calmly, always becoming. This is what Aristotle called entelechy, the unfolding of potential within each being. You are not a finished product. You are a process, a journey in motion. And that in itself is reason for peace. There is no rush. There is no perfect point to reach. The act of seeking, the willingness to grow, to ponder, to care, that is the good life. So breathe now, deeply, slowly. Let the breath carry you through this long, golden tradition. Let the wisdom of centuries settle like gentle snow upon your thoughts. Let go of the need to arrive. Simply be. In this state of calm reflection, you are at home in the universe of thought. You are with Socrates, listening carefully, with Plato, imagining a world beyond, with Aristotle, noticing the beauty of what is, and as the night deepens, as the stars wheel overhead in ancient constellations, as sleep begins to cradle you more closely, know that this journey does not end. It continues, each morning, in every mindful moment, in every act of courage or kindness or curiosity. It continues in you. You are a philosopher, not by title, but by nature, and tonight, as you rest, you are part of a legacy more lasting than marble. So rest, gentle mind, rest, seeking soul. The ancient voices whisper softly, you are enough, you are wise, you are free. Sleep now, and let the wisdom of the ages keep watch beside you. And so, in the quiet folds of the night, as the world slumbers and the stars drift overhead like ancient lanterns, we come to the soft final notes of our journey through the heart of ancient wisdom. You've walked the marble paths of Athens. You've listened to Socrates ask his timeless questions. You've watched Plato dream beyond the world of appearances. You've stood beside Aristotle as he observed the unfolding beauty of the natural world. Now, let us bring it all together, not as a conclusion, but as a gentle return to stillness. What, after all, was the purpose of this long tradition? Was it to build empires, to win arguments, to conquer nature? No. Philosophy, at its heart, was never about power. It was about understanding, about the quiet dignity of seeking what is true, what is good, what is beautiful, even if we may never fully find it. Socrates taught us that the unexamined life is not worth living, not because we must always analyze ourselves, but because life becomes richer, more luminous when we pay attention. He walked barefoot through the streets of Athens, speaking not with grandiosity, but with humility. He asked questions not to embarrass, but to invite. He believed each person had the seeds of wisdom within them, waiting only for conversation, for care, for reflection to bloom. Plato taught us that beyond this shifting, imperfect world lies a deeper reality, that justice, beauty, and truth are not just opinions, but universal forms, pure and eternal. He reminded us that we are not only bodies, we are souls reaching upward, that within each of us is the memory of something higher, something bright. And Aristotle taught us to look closely, to see patterns in the chaos, purposes in nature, potential in each living thing. He taught that happiness, true happiness, is not in momentary pleasure, but in realizing our nature fully, in becoming who we are meant to be. Each of these thinkers gave us not a map, but a compass. They taught us how to orient ourselves in a world that often feels uncertain. They gave us tools for living, not in control, but in harmony. And their teachings were never meant to be heavy or abstract. In fact, they are best understood in the smallest moments. When you pause to consider the right thing to do, you walk with Socrates. When you imagine a better world, not yet seen, but deeply felt, you sit beside Plato. When you take joy in understanding a leaf, a song, a friend, a star, you walk with Aristotle, hand in hand with nature itself. Their legacy is not confined to ivory towers or dusty tomes. It lives in how we speak to each other, in how we raise our children, in how we treat the stranger, the neighbor, the earth beneath our feet. It lives in the way we ask questions when it might be easier to stay silent, in the way we strive for truth when it would be simpler to pretend, in the way we pursue justice, not perfectly, but persistently. And in this way, each of us becomes part of the same tradition, a tradition of seekers, of learners, of gentle rebels who believe the world can be understood not perfectly, but more fully. Philosophy does not promise answers. It promises meaning. It offers a hand in the dark, a candle in the wind, a calm voice saying, "Let's think about this together." In this, it is not distant. It is intimate, soft, human. And when the noise of the world becomes too much, philosophy invites you to step back, to breathe, to reflect, to remember that you are not just part of a crowd. You are a soul capable of love, of reason, of wonder, capable of saying, "I do not know," and still walking forward. As the night wraps more tightly around you and your body relaxes further into sleep, let yourself rest in this knowledge. You are part of something vast and beautiful. From the shaded groves of ancient Athens to the quiet libraries of medieval monasteries, to the lecture halls and homes and hearts of today, you are linked. You are not alone in your questions, not alone in your hopes, not alone in your quiet desire to live a good life. And what is the good life? It is not perfection. It is not constant joy. It is not having every answer. The good life is a life examined, a life with care, a life with compassion for others and for yourself, a life where you pause from time to time and ask, what matters to me? What kind of person do I want to be? How can I bring more truth, more justice, more beauty into the world? These questions, these gentle questions, are the heartbeat of philosophy. And when you ask them, even softly, even uncertainly, even at the edge of sleep, you are keeping the oldest tradition alive. Let the breath move slowly in and out. Let the mind settle like a leaf on still water. You are not chasing answers tonight. You are allowing them to come to you as dreams, as whispers, as gentle tides. And even if no answer comes, still, you are walking the right path. Because philosophy is not a race. It is not a destination. It is a way of being in the world, quiet, thoughtful, awake. And now, as you sink deeper, let yourself drift through the corridors of time, past the groves where Plato once taught, past the steps where Socrates stood his ground, past the Lyceum where Aristotle watched the stars. You are floating now, gently, through the stream of all who have sought understanding, through sages and students, seekers and saints, through generations of gentle minds, asking the same questions with love and sincerity. You are safe here. You are enough here. There is no need to struggle, no need to prove. There is only this, your quiet breath, your calm presence, your peaceful mind. In this moment, you are living the philosophy they taught, not through words or theories, but through stillness, through care, through being. And when the morning comes and light begins to return, you will carry a bit of this calm with you, not as knowledge, but as wisdom, not as noise, but as clarity, not as burden, but as light. For this is what the philosophers truly gave us, not rules, but reminders, not commandments, but conversations, not answers, but a way of seeing, gently, kindly, clearly. And so, as sleep takes you fully now, know that you are exactly where you need to be, in the arms of timeless thought, in the company of the wise, in the unfolding of your own gentle truth. Rest now, and let the voice of philosophy whisper you into the deepest peace. Good night, and may the wisdom of the ancients walk beside you always. The sun rises over Rome, not with a burst, but a gradual brightening, a warm golden glow seeping between terracotta rooftops and ivy-covered walls. Somewhere in a modest apartment building called an insula, a Roman citizen stirs from slumber. He is not a senator, nor a soldier, nor a scholar, just a simple man, perhaps a craftsman, or a merchant, or a laborer. His name has long been lost, but his routine, his rhythm of life, still whispers to us. He wakes not with an alarm, but with the rising light. There is no need for clocks. Time is told by the angle of the sun, the shadows on the wall, the cries of merchants down below. He stretches, stands, and splashes his face with water from a clay basin. His home is modest, a small room, perhaps two. The floor beneath him is worn brick. The air smells faintly of oil, bread, and dust. The city never truly sleeps, and even now the street outside murmurs with distant footsteps and the clip-clop of mule hooves pulling carts over stone. For breakfast there is no feast. A piece of bread, yesterday's perhaps, dipped into wine, maybe some cheese if luck was good the day before. The bread is coarse, made with barley or spelt, not fluffy like modern loaves, but it satisfies. He dresses in his tunica, simple and functional, belted at the waist. Sandals, worn thin from miles of walking, complete the attire. There is no luxury in his garments, no dyes, no fine linen, just the everyday outfit of a Roman doing his part in the hum of the empire. Outside, Rome bustles, markets open with the calls of vendors, fresh olives, fine oil, garum, the best fish sauce. The scents are overwhelming. Spices, fermenting grapes, roasted meats, and sewage all mingling in the summer heat. A cacophony of life. Rome to us is a monument, but to its people it was a machine, gritty, loud, ever moving. He heads to work. If he is a laborer, he might build the very walls that still stand 2 millennia later. If a craftsman, he'll spend the day hammering bronze. He's heard of such things, maybe even watched the upper class dining through open villa doors, but for him, such indulgence belongs to another world. As afternoon deepens, he may visit the thermae, the public baths. Not just for bathing, these are social centers. He strips, stores his clothes, and begins the ritual. Warm room, hot room, cold plunge. He scrapes sweat and oil from his skin with a strigil, listens to gossip, debates politics with friends. Evening falls, the light softens, dinner is shared with family or neighbors. More lentils, maybe porridge, olives, dried fruit. They sit on stools, talking softly in the glow of oil lamps. Stories are told, jokes are shared. The day winds down. Life is hard, but it has its small comforts. And as sleep returns, he rests, knowing tomorrow will look much the same. Work, bread, community, the eternal city spins on. Now, we drift backward in time, even farther. The air grows warmer, drier. The land flattens into golden plains. The Nile sparkles under the sun like a silver snake. Welcome to ancient Egypt. It is morning in a village near the great river. A woman stirs in her reed home. The mud brick walls hold the cool of the night, but already the air thickens with heat. She is a farmer's wife, or perhaps a weaver. She does not live near pyramids or palaces, but among fields of flax and barley. She steps outside and hears birds chirping among the papyrus. The Nile has flooded recently, blessing the soil. Her husband and sons are already in the fields, turning earth, planting, preparing. Agriculture is the lifeblood of Egypt, and she knows every season by heart. Her day begins with bread, again. But Egyptian bread is dense and gritty, made with stone-ground emmer wheat. Sometimes sand gets into the dough, wearing down teeth over a lifetime. Alongside it, beer, thick, soupy, mildly fermented. It nourishes and sustains. She grinds grain by hand, rhythmically, with a stone mill. She weaves linen on a wooden loom, her fingers practiced and nimble. Her daughters help, learning from watching. There is work, but also song, songs to the gods, songs to pass the time. Religion is not distant here. It is embedded in every moment. She wears a small amulet, perhaps of Isis, goddess of motherhood. She leaves an offering at the household shrine, incense, a fig, a prayer. Life is fragile. The gods must be honored. At midday, the heat is oppressive. She rests in the shade, washing her feet in cool water. Perhaps she visits the market, a collection of woven mats on dusty ground, selling fish, dates, onions, spices. There is laughter, barter, community. Evening brings the return of her husband, sun-darkened and weary. They eat lentils, leeks, and more bread, maybe dried fish, salted and smoked. If the catch was good, it's a feast. They sit on the floor, share stories, watch the sun paint the river in crimson and gold. They speak of Ra, who sails the sky by day and battles darkness at night. Of Osiris, who died and was reborn. Of the Pharaoh, divine and distant. Of ancestors who watch and protect. She dreams under a star-pricked sky, the gentle hush of the Nile a lullaby. And now, another breeze lifts us across the Mediterranean to the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece. It is morning in a small village near Athens. A boy rises from his sleep. The house is open and airy, stone walls, wooden beams, a central courtyard. The smell of olives and clay fills the air. He eats breakfast with his family, barley porridge with honey, perhaps a fig or a few grapes, goat cheese. His father speaks of philosophy, of justice, of the city's news. His mother tends to the hearth, offers a prayer to Hestia, goddess of the home. He walks with his father to the agora, the public marketplace. It is a lively place. Merchants, philosophers, potters, poets. Men debate loudly under shaded colonnades. The boy listens with wide eyes, trying to understand. His mother visits the fountain house, draws cool water in a ceramic jug. She chats with neighbors. They speak of festivals, of harvests, of Athena's favor. Religion is woven into daily life, small sacrifices, little rituals, salt tossed into a fire, garlands hung on doors. Lunch is humble, olives, bread, lentils, wild greens, simple and fresh. They sit cross-legged on woven mats, sharing bites and stories. Food is sacred, every meal a gift. In the afternoon, the boy learns at home, reading Homer, practicing writing with a wax tablet and stylus. He recites verses from the Iliad, his voice soft and sure. His father teaches him virtue, moderation, courage, to be a good citizen, to seek truth. The girl of the house is not sent to school. Instead, she learns from her mother how to weave, how to manage a home, how to worship the gods. Her world is quieter, more private, but no less rich. She plays with clay dolls, sings songs to Artemis. As the sun lowers, dinner is served. Roasted vegetables, more bread, maybe grilled fish, wine mixed with water, sipped slowly, always with conversation. The sky turns rose, then violet. The stars appear, ancient and unblinking. The family gathers in the courtyard. They speak of stories, the gods, the heroes, the stars. Perhaps the father recites a tale of Odysseus. Perhaps the mother sings a hymn to Demeter. The boy listens, head on his mother's lap. The girl curls beside the dog, drowsy, and slowly, softly, sleep comes. The ancient world was not quiet nor easy. It was full of dust and toil, of heat and hunger, but it was also full of rhythm, of belief, of community. Days were shaped by the rising and setting sun. Meals were shared, songs were sung, gods were honored. Hands worked the earth, the loom, the forge, the pen. And though the marble temples have crumbled, though the names of the ordinary are long forgotten, their lives still echo, their footsteps still linger in the dust. Their stories, like gentle waves, wash up upon the shores of sleep. The moon rises slowly above the tiled rooftops of Rome. As night unfolds, the city does not grow silent, only softer. A distant lyre plays in the courtyard of a wealthier domus. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then quiets. And in the upper floors of an insula, our Roman laborer turns in his sleep. But while he dreams, life continues elsewhere. In another part of the city, a baker is already awake. Long before the sun rises, he stokes the embers of his oven, breathing life into the warm, glowing chamber. His fingers are calloused, his motions practiced. He shapes dough into rounded loaves, dusts them with flour, places them on the hot stones. The smell of baking bread begins to drift through alleyways, rising with the morning dew. Bakers in Rome were essential and respected in their own quiet way. They worked long hours, often before anyone else stirred. Bread was not just food. It was life, it was politics, it was survival. The government knew this well, which is why grain was distributed freely to the poor under the Annona system. Panem et circenses, bread and circuses, kept the peace in the city. As the baker's fire roars to life, a lamplighter walks his route, extinguishing the last flickers of night. His oil supply is low, and his robe is stained with soot, but he hums to himself. The city awakens slowly, one torch snuffed out at a time. Soon the bath attendants rise to prepare the thermae once more. They carry water, polish stone, lay out towels. They know their regulars by name, the quiet merchant, the loud ex-soldier, the aging widow who comes for gossip more than cleanliness. And as the streets fill again with life, the Roman sun begins its climb, eternal, golden, indifferent. But let's drift from Rome now. Let's cross back to Egypt, where morning begins not with the sound of carts or shouting vendors, but with the quiet murmur of water and the lowing of cattle. In a village near the Nile, another day begins. Farmers walk barefoot through moist earth, carrying baskets and wooden tools. The land is lush this time of year, thanks to the inundation of the Nile. These waters brought fertility, and with it, security. Life in rural Egypt followed the river's rhythm. There were 3 seasons: Akhet, the flooding season; Peret, the growing season; and Shamu, the harvest. Each season carried its own duties, rituals, and expectations. People knew them instinctively, just as one knows when to breathe. Women in the home begin their morning with prayer. They sprinkle water before their household shrines, light incense made from myrrh and frankincense. They might utter a few quiet words to Bastet, the cat-headed goddess of home and joy. Cats sit nearby, basking in the sun, worshipped in their own right, guardians against vermin and symbols of grace. Inside, a pot of barley simmers over a low fire. The aroma is thick and hearty. Children help grind grain, a song on their lips passed down for generations. Music was a constant presence in Egypt. Soft melodies played on lyres, flutes, and sistrums. Even the labor of the day was rhythmic, moving in time with beat and breath. Clothing is simple: linen robes bleached by the sun, tied with cords. Jewelry is colorful and made from faience, shell, or semi-precious stones. Men wear short kilts. Women wear long, flowing dresses. Their skin glows with oils pressed from castor or moringa. At midday, the sun reaches its peak. Shade becomes precious. The village quiets. People rest beneath palm fronds or cool clay walls. The Nile glimmers like molten gold, its surface alive with boatmen, fishermen, and traders. In town, a scribe unrolls a papyrus scroll. He dips his reed brush into black ink and records the day's figures: bushels harvested, taxes owed, cattle born. Scribes are respected, keepers of knowledge in a largely illiterate world. They wear clean robes and carry themselves with quiet dignity. Elsewhere, in the workshop of a potter, clay spins on a simple wheel. The potter's fingers shape it into vessels, some for water, some for wine, others for offerings to the gods. Each curve is guided by muscle memory, by experience, by lineage, skills passed from father to son, mother to daughter. As the sun sets, colors change again. The world grows bronze, then red, then deep indigo. Oil lamps flicker to life. Food is prepared. Bread is pulled from ovens shaped like beehives. Fish is stewed with leeks. Onions are sliced. Dates are shared. Beer is poured. Families eat together in small circles, laughing, talking, and offering thanks to the gods who watch from painted walls and carved statues. The stars begin to reveal themselves, the constellations moving across the heavens as they always have. The people know them well. They do not name them like we do. They know their meanings, their moods, and as night falls, children fall asleep to stories, not written ones, but spoken ones. Myths of Isis and Osiris, of the sun god Ra, journeying through the underworld, battling serpents of chaos. Tales of heroism, loss, magic. These are not entertainment. They are the very structure of understanding the world. Egypt sleeps again. Now, once more, to Greece. In a coastal village, the salty wind rustles olive trees. Fishermen return from the early tide, their boats rocking gently at the dock. They unload their catch, silver fish glinting in the dawn. Some will be salted and preserved, others sold fresh in the agora. Their wives wait nearby, ready to help clean, gut, and sort. They speak of dreams, omens, weather. Dreams in ancient Greece were not meaningless. They were messages, often from the gods, and while interpretations varied, they were taken seriously. The fisherman's child sits on a stone, watching the gulls circle above. He chews a piece of dry bread and wonders what the sea is like beyond the horizon. One day, perhaps, he will sail with a merchant to Corinth, or Delos, or even distant Egypt. For now, he listens to the sea and to the stories it seems to whisper. Back in the village, the potter's wheel spins again. Greek pottery, with its black figure and red figure designs, is not just practical, it is art, history, myth frozen in clay. A single vase can tell a whole tale. Achilles chasing Hector, Dionysus dancing with satyrs, Athena springing from Zeus's head. Each pot is a book, each cup a chapter. Nearby in a small gymnasium, young men exercise under the guidance of a trainer. Naked as was the custom, they wrestle, throw discus, run laps. But this is not just about the body, it is about excellence, or arete, the pursuit of balance, strength, harmony. Older men sit under the shade of olive trees discussing ethics, mathematics, the soul. Philosophy is not a subject here, it is a way of life. They speak of Plato, of Heraclitus, of the meaning of justice. Their tones are calm but passionate. This is how ideas are formed, in dialogue, in disagreement, in companionship. Women, too, have their domains, though largely kept from public debate. They wield power in the home. They manage finances, arrange marriages, oversee festivals. During the Thesmophoria, a fertility festival for Demeter and Persephone, only women gather, performing ancient rites, keeping secrets that men will never know. In the afternoon, the temple of Apollo echoes with hymns. Worshippers offer laurel branches, burn incense, and whisper prayers. The priest speaks calmly, interpreting the smoke, the bird flights, the murmurs of the sacred spring. To the Greeks, the divine was everywhere, in wind, in flame, in words. The gods were not distant, they lived alongside people, with all their flaws and tempers. A storm could be Poseidon's anger, a sudden illness, the wrath of Apollo. Life required humility, ritual, respect. And as twilight comes, the people dine together. A symposium might follow, a drinking gathering where philosophy, poetry, and music flow as freely as the wine. But in the countryside, it is simpler. Bread dipped in oil, goat stew, cheese, grapes, laughter. They sit under fig trees, children on laps, dogs at feet. The world feels ancient, yes, but also familiar, human, warm, and slowly the stars return. Can you see them now? The same stars that shone on Rome, on Egypt, on Greece. The same stars watched by farmers, potters, bakers, philosophers. The same sky that held the hopes, dreams, fears, and faith of civilizations long gone, but never truly lost. The ancient world was shaped not only by the rhythms of work, religion, and the sun, but by the relationships between people. Let us drift now into the quieter details of those relationships, the things they whispered by firelight, the bonds they forged in shared labor, the traditions they passed from hand to hand, heart to heart. In Rome, among the cluttered apartments and alleyways of the insulae, neighbors were more than acquaintances. They were survival. Walls were thin. Voices traveled easily. Families borrowed oil, grain, a listening ear. Women chatted as they washed clothes in shared courtyards. Children chased each other between laundry lines. In the absence of privacy, there was community, and in this community, roles were understood and followed. The father, or paterfamilias, held legal authority. He was the head of the household, but within the home, a mother's influence was undeniable. She arranged marriages, shaped the upbringing of children, managed the household budget, and honored the family's ancestral spirits, the Lares and Penates, with daily offerings. Small statues tucked into niches were touched with reverence, a reminder that those who came before were still watching, still part of the family. Children were not sheltered as they are today. From a young age they observed, assisted, learned. Boys followed their fathers to the forum or marketplace. Girls mirrored their mothers in the kitchen and shrine. Games were played, knucklebones, hoop rolling, dolls made of rags and wax, and always there were stories. Myths retold by flickering lamplight, fables from Aesop, histories from Livy. In rural Egypt, too, the family was the center of life. Grandparents lived with children, cousins, siblings, all under one roof or across neighboring homes. The extended family was not a luxury, it was the natural order of things. Elders were revered, sought for wisdom, feared a little, loved greatly. Marriages were more practical than romantic, but love was not absent. Papyrus scraps survive with love poems, written by young Egyptians expressing longing and admiration. Your voice is my delight. It makes my heart dance. They walked among reeds and palm groves, shared bread and secrets, raised children with hands that knew both labor and tenderness. Women in Egypt had notable legal rights compared to other ancient cultures. They could own property, initiate divorce, and conduct business. Some ran vineyards, managed estates, even worked as priestesses or healers. And beneath all of this pulsed an ever-present belief in the afterlife. Death was not the end, but a transition. Bodies were carefully preserved, not only for royalty, but for ordinary people as well, if they could afford it. Coffins were painted with spells, instructions, and prayers. The Book of the Dead was not a single book, but a collection of magical formulas and illustrations to guide the soul through the trials of the underworld. In the small home of a scribe, a child might watch his father dip a brush in black ink and draw neat hieroglyphs, each one a symbol of protection or passage. A vulture for motherhood, a lotus for rebirth, an ankh for life itself. And so they lived, not in fear of death, but in preparation for it, in hope of continuing the story beyond this world. In Greece, the family was similarly central, yet tinged with a cultural longing for honor and remembrance. A man did not just live for himself. He lived to uphold his name, his lineage, his reputation. His home, or oikos, was more than a building. It was his role in society. It was his standing among the gods. Men often left home for long stretches, serving in wars, sailing for trade, attending festivals or political assemblies. While they were gone, their wives maintained the household with strength and quiet command. A Greek woman might not speak in the public square, but within her walls she governed with precision. The hearth fire was sacred. It was tended with devotion and never allowed to go out. Around it, stories unfolded. Meals were cooked, offerings made. Every flame was tied to Hestia, goddess of home and harmony. Even when new colonies were founded far across the sea, embers from the mother city's hearth were carried across waters to light the new fires, linking the new home to the old. Friendship, or philia, was another cornerstone of Greek daily life. Not merely companionship, but a shared pursuit of virtue. Men formed tight bonds, often with deep intellectual and emotional dimensions. They drank wine together, argued about the nature of courage, walked under the stars, speaking of fate and philosophy. Hospitality, or xenia, was sacred. A traveler could knock on a stranger's door and be offered bread, wine, and a place to sleep. One never knew if the dusty wanderer was in fact a disguised god testing human decency. And above it all, the gods watched. In Rome, the pantheon was vast and structured. Jupiter, lord of the skies, Mars, the war god, Venus, life. One did not need to visit a grand temple to show devotion. Small altars in homes, coins tossed into fountains, whispered prayers in alleyways, all counted. In Egypt, the divine world was thick and layered. Horus, with the head of a falcon, watched the skies. Thoth, with the head of an ibis, recorded every deed. Hathor, the cow goddess, brought joy and music. Offerings were constant. A drop of oil, a handful of barley, a flower plucked and placed beside a statue with reverence. The gods were not aloof. They were everywhere, in every breeze, flame, and heartbeat. And in Greece, the gods were gloriously human. They loved and quarreled, laughed and plotted. Temples stood in every city and village, but so did sacred groves and springs. A shepherd might pray to Pan in the forest. A mother might offer cakes to Artemis for safe childbirth. A sailor might whisper to Poseidon for calm seas. The festivals were vibrant, echoing with drums and flutes, adorned with garlands and incense. In Rome, the Saturnalia brought joy and reversal. Slaves dined like masters, gifts were exchanged, laughter filled the streets. In Egypt, the Opet festival saw statues of gods carried through the streets by priests, music ringing in the air. In Greece, the Dionysia overflowed with plays and wine and poetry, celebrating the god of ecstasy and theater. Each celebration reminded the people they were not alone in the cosmos. Their lives, however ordinary, were touched by something eternal. As night deepens, imagine the streets of Athens now. The marketplace is empty, stalls closed, lamps extinguished, Only the occasional night bird calls. In the distance, atop the Acropolis, the Parthenon stands bathed in moonlight, columns glowing like bone. The wind whispers through olive trees. In a simple home, a young girl listens as her grandmother tells stories, not from a scroll, not from a tablet, but from memory, stories passed like heirlooms. Once, she begins, there was a boy named Perseus. The girl's eyes widen. She knows this one. She's heard it many times, but still, she listens. The words are familiar but magical. The monsters, the hero, the gods who helped and hindered. She falls asleep before the tale ends. In Egypt, a similar scene unfolds. A family reclines on woven mats, the coolness of the evening washing over them. The children drift into dreams as an elder hums an old song, and in Rome, a father tucks his son into bed with a simple tale of Romulus and Remus, twins raised by a she-wolf, founders of the greatest city in the world. Whether the story is true or not doesn't matter. What matters is the ritual, the rhythm, the comfort of knowing one's place in a grander narrative. So much has changed since then, but so much has stayed the same. We still tell stories. We still gather around light, though now it is electric rather than fire. We still break bread with others. We still watch the stars. We still worry, laugh, pray, hope. And when we sleep, we dream just like them. The ancient world was not only temples and wars and great men. It was sweeping floors and hanging laundry. It was children learning to write. It was the smell of garlic frying in oil. It was hands in clay, fingers in flour, voices raised in song. It was, at its heart, wonderfully human. And now, as your breath slows, as your thoughts drift like boats on the Nile, let the gentle truth of the past carry you farther into sleep. You are connected to these people, not by blood necessarily, but by being, by living, by dreaming. You walk paths once walked, eat food that echoes theirs, watch stars that watched them. Their world lives on, quietly, within us. And now, with the hush of history wrapping around you like a warm blanket, you may rest. You are safe. You are still. You are part of the story. Sleep well. Picture now the winding streets of a Roman provincial town, perhaps in Gaul or Hispania or North Africa. The great empire was not just Rome itself, but a vast network of cultures woven together under Roman law, Roman roads, and Roman ways. And yet, every corner had its own flavor, its own scent in the morning air, its own accents echoing from the market. In the provinces, daily life bore traces of both local tradition and Roman influence. A farmer in the hills of Gaul might still follow ancient tribal rituals, honoring his ancestors in quiet ceremonies, while also lighting incense to Jupiter at a local shrine. His wife, who wears a blend of Roman-style tunic and native embroidery, prepares a stew of beans and onions, while her children speak Latin with their teachers and Gaulish with their grandparents. At night, the tavern glows with oil lamps. Travelers share news from distant cities, how the legions fared in Britannia, what new decree has arrived from the emperor, how the grain ships sail from Egypt to feed the hungry heart of the empire. Over shared bread and wine, laughter bubbles up and old songs are sung. The language may change, but the pattern remains. Eat, share, remember, believe. Far to the south, the life of a craftsman in Alexandria tells a different story. His workshop overlooks the harbor where ships from all over the Mediterranean dock each morning. Greek merchants, Egyptian priests, Roman officials all brush shoulders here. The craftsman repairs mosaics for villas, inlays gold into ebony boxes, and writes short prayers in both Greek and Demotic on slips of papyrus to be tucked into amulets. His wife is educated, unusual for most parts of the world, but not here. She grew up reading Homer and Plato. She also knows the healing spells of Isis and whispers them when her child is ill. Their daughter studies music and mathematics, taught by a teacher who insists that numbers have harmony and that the soul responds to perfect proportion like the strings of a lyre. And when illness comes, they do not think only of medicine, but of balance. They call upon Asclepius, god of healing. They offer honey and incense. They pray not to avoid death, but for peace and mercy if it must come. Elsewhere in Greece, in the highlands or the isles, the days are quieter. A shepherd walks along the ridgeline with his flock. The sheep's bells jingle softly. The wind smells of thyme and salt. He carries a staff, wears a cloak against the breeze, and sings softly as he walks, ancient tunes passed down from his father and his father's father. He has little, yet wants for less. His meals are olives and bread, goat's milk, a handful of dried figs. He watches the stars at night, naming them not by scientific constellations, but by stories. That one is Orion, the hunter. That cluster, the Pleiades, 7 sisters. His understanding of the heavens is woven with poetry. In the cities, philosophers and orators still speak. But out here, beneath the wide open sky, truth is simpler. A good day is one without storm. A good life is one with peace. And far to the east, in the temple towns of the Nile, another kind of peace is sought. The priests in Egypt live by strict order. They wake before dawn, bathe in cold water, and dress in pure linen. Their heads are shaved. Their duties are not merely ceremonial. They clean the temples, tend to sacred animals, light the morning fire, recite the same hymns that were spoken 1,000 years before. Their temple is a microcosm of the world, walls painted with celestial boats, gods in profile, stars and scarabs, and the feather of Maud, goddess of truth. Every gesture they make, every word they utter, is part of a sacred performance meant to keep the world in harmony. Outside the temple walls, life goes on. Farmers push water wheels to lift Nile water into irrigation channels. Children splash in the shallows, chasing fish with woven nets. An old woman sells blue lotus at the market, a flower said to open with the sun and close with dusk, mirroring rebirth itself. And through it all, the same quiet thread, belief that life is more than labor, that the soul matters, that the unseen world is as real as the one they touch. In Rome, festivals break the routine, the Lupercalia, wild and raucous, the Parentalia, soft and solemn, honoring the dead. Families gather near tombs, bring flowers, offer wine and cake to the departed. It is not mourning, it is communion. They speak to the dead as if they were still present, because in a way, they are. Even slaves who bore the burdens of empire found meaning in their own ways. Many had families, even if not recognized by law. They loved, hoped, remembered. Some became free and rose in society. Others held on to their ancestry, their songs, their quiet faith that they were more than their chains. In Greece, actors take the stage in the amphitheater, tragedies by Euripides, comedies by Aristophanes. Thousands sit in the open air, listening to the actors' voices echo across stone. The themes are eternal: honor, revenge, love, fate. Even in laughter there is truth. The audience nods, understanding deeply, even as they chuckle. The sun sets and the stars continue their slow turning overhead. It is comforting, isn't it, to know that people lived not so differently from us. They loved, they worried, they dreamed, they kissed their children goodnight. They watched birds take flight and wondered if it was an omen. They sang while they worked. They held on to stories. They laughed around meals. They saw time as a circle, not a line. The seasons returned. The gods returned. And so too did sleep. Imagine now a quiet room in an ancient house. The walls are clay, painted with soft colors. A breeze rustles a woven curtain. A sleeping mat lies on the floor, and on it someone drifts to sleep, just as you are. They lie listening to the distant sounds of the night, a donkey braying, a flute playing, water trickling in a jar. Their thoughts quiet, their breath slows. Maybe they are dreaming of the gods, maybe of harvests or journeys or songs, but maybe they are simply feeling what you are feeling now, that perfect stillness that comes when the day is over and the body has done enough. The ancient world, for all its strangeness, was filled with the same quiet moments we know today, moments when everything pauses, when nothing more is asked, when all that remains is to rest. So let your thoughts drift, like leaves on the Nile. Let your breath soften, like wind through an olive grove. Let yourself imagine a warm sun, a familiar home, a shared meal. Let yourself feel the echo of lives long past, but never far. And as the stars shine gently above the quiet rooftops of long-forgotten cities, sleep. Sleep, knowing that across time, across space, across history, people just like you have closed their eyes in peace. You are part of that eternal rhythm. You belong. You are safe. You are home.